Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be reacting to and discussing the second episode of To Your Eternity. The first episode was a heavy one. We got to meet the entity, and we saw him meet the boy. The pacing of the first episode was a little slow, but used to great effect to really drive in the point of despair into, the hearts of the audience. Because, even thinking about it now, that boy is such a sweet little kid to have so much hope and spirit left in him, being in such a position of total despair and loss, being alone for almost 5 years or whenever the elders he was taking care of had passed on, and still having so much hope for his dreams and his goals to one day see the world, learn about it, and meet new people. And that just juxtaposed with the total despair of the Arctic graveyard that he was doomed to stay in forever. It really pulled at the heartstrings, that's for sure. So now, the entity having taken over the form of the boy is on his way, hopefully with some more direction. Definitely not south, that's for sure. But we'll see what the world has to offer him. I'm excited to see what they do with this episode. So I'll see you guys back here after the reaction for the discussion. Okay guys, I am loving where this is going so far. This episode was, simultaneously heavy and sad, yet just adorable with that little girl March. That scene where we got to meet her and she was, making food for her little baby, and then her sister comes and acts like her wife and brings her another baby, and she says, "Oh, we have another baby." Yeah, it's just so adorable. March basically she's this little kid, this little girl full of, and the episode title is Rambunctious Girl, just full of spirit and full of energy. And maybe we're going to keep coming back to this, but full of, the will to live. It was particularly funny when she's asking her parents, she's saying like, "Man, everyone in the village is already grown up and there's only 3 kids and I'm one of them, and like, when am I going to be an adult?" And her dad says the ironic little joke that, if she behaves, she'll eventually become an adult. Something that any parent would tell their kids just in order to, because they can't really fathom how long it's going to take for them to grow up at the age. She looks honestly like she's 3, maybe 4, but who knows? She could be 5. They can't comprehend how long it's going to take for them to be an adult, or how much they're going to have to go through for that to happen. It's just going to happen as it happens. It's one of those things that you can't rush it. It's and it keeps coming back to this existential overarching motif that they keep bringing back up into the story of what it takes to be, who you want to be, or what it takes to be a human, or what it takes to grow up in this case. And that's going to take a lot of life experience and a lot of time. And I think they handled that so nicely when she ran into the entity and he regenerated himself, but he just had no idea how to act. And she's like throwing him these pears from this tree, and he's just gobbling them up like he's the wolf again, basically. That's the only way he knows how to eat. And she basically has to be the mother figure for him to teach him how he has to eat properly, and then how he has to say thank you after. That was just such a nice way to intertwine the two characters while adhering to how each character has been set up in the first episode and then in this episode, both the entity and March. But this also reminds me of something the narrator described at the beginning when the entity was just wandering. It didn't know how to be a human. And I think specifically it said that it possessed none of the qualities that make a human. And because of that, it ended up, starving and soiling itself and eventually just dying over and over, but each time just regenerating. Because I guess this thing at this point is immortal, as little March notes correctly. So as the entity is dying each time, it's progressively being able to stay alive longer and longer. And then the narrator says that no death is wasted because pain promotes growth. And that's a really interesting theme to bring up that may carry on throughout, this episode, this story arc, maybe even throughout the entire anime. Who knows? This idea it's an ever-present idea, the idea that it's when we get out of our comfort zone, when things become difficult, that we truly, are able to become our best selves, become what we were meant to become, to achieve what we were meant to achieve. It's at the margins that we experience the growth. It's always at, the leading edge of any field where progress is made, or in those toughest moments where you really have to dig deep and take that next step and grow yourself as a person, which literally the entity is doing it from scratch right now. Another thing that I wanted to touch on was when the entity regenerated in that little swamp pond thing, it looked like he was just laying in the water there, just unconscious, doing nothing, his eyeballs just floating there. And it wasn't until March actually touched the eyeball, that it began to move and regenerate itself, ultimately, scaring off those two guys that were sent to find March. And I mean, credit to March, she wasn't freaked out by this. Apparently, she just tagged along with him and tried to get him to talk with her and see what he's doing. But honestly, that really got me thinking, what pushes this entity to keep going, to keep moving? Like, what is the force behind it? This, coupled with the narrator saying in the end of the last episode that the entity is going to search for more stimulation, specifically stimulation in the world. To me, that hints at a connection between the entity and a will to live, or a drive to accomplish goals or dreams or something like that. Because we've seen so far two characters, the boy and this girl March, that have very strong, passionate dreams and goals that sparks life in them, if you could say that. So, I'll be keeping an eye on this as it pops up here and there, but I'm sure we're going to see more connections with that, more to do with, because the entity could have at different times changed into many different things, but it has kept going in the form of the boy. Maybe because the boy had given him so much impetus, so much drive, or had shown him that. I don't know. It's definitely something interesting to keep an eye on going forward. Getting back to March, though, when she got chosen to be the offering, man, I couldn't believe how well her parents were able to just smile and wave and laugh and play it off until they finally got to their house. My God, like, that would have just crushed them. I mean, it did crush them, but I don't know how they did that. That was hats off to them. They should go to acting school. I don't know. But honestly, that whole plan for the offering where she goes to sleep on the altar and then everybody leaves before that big bear comes to eat her, I guess. That plan, as we saw, doesn't seem like the greatest plan because, like I said, could easily just fake a death and run away. Obviously, and maybe that's why they choose, the untarnished girl or something, because it would be harder for a little girl to escape and run away on her own, that sort of thing. They're more like gullible, more willing to believe that, they don't have a choice in the matter. And even that warrior lady who came to the village to inform them that, their village had been chosen to give the offering this year, she tried to come up with a little story to help March behave, basically, and go along with it, saying that there's freedom after people die and that they could be whatever they want, including being a mommy or parent or something, which she knew was what March wanted to be. But yeah, that plan, as could see, when Perona tried to save her, she had the bag of bones that she was going to leave at the altar. So when they went back in a year, that's all they would find, and they would think, okay, good. But I don't know what kind of bone she was using, but they should have been able to tell it wasn't little girl's bones, that's for sure. That's just picking at the details. Clearly, someone could help her escape between the time when they leave her at the altar and, that big beast comes to eat them. And before we end this, I just wanted to mention again how just adorable March's expressions are, how she's, the quintessential little child who wants to be grown up and act grown up, and how overly dramatic her expressions are, and how over the top her acting like an adult is, when you can tell she's just like this adorable little child. That was so cute. So I am really looking forward to next week's episode, and hopefully I can get that reaction out to you guys as soon as possible. Fingers crossed that I don't get any copyright strikes on this, so that I can keep putting the reaction videos in the YouTube video and, not having to upload the video somewhere else. That would just be great. But as always, guys, thank you so much for watching. And if you have any questions or comments or feedback, just let me know in the comments. I'll definitely read all of them, that's for sure. Other than that, I'll look forward to seeing you guys for next week's episode. Take care, everyone.